All right, so the main thing that we use sine and cosine functions for, besides like finding values of sine and cosine with angles and stuff, is something called sinusoidal functions. So sinusoidal functions are real world problems that you need to make into a sine or cosine function. So the first thing that I like to do when I do these is decide if it's sine or cosine. And something is going to be sine. Whoops. Something's going to be sine if it starts in the middle. And something's going to be cosine if it starts at a max or min. Okay, so for number one, it says, in Canada's Wonderland, there's a roller coaster that is a continuous series of identical hills that are 18 meters high from the ground. That's probably important. The platform to get on the ride is at the top of the first hill. That's important. It takes 3 seconds for the coaster to reach the bottom of the hill 2 meters off the ground. Sketch the graph below which expresses the path of the roller coaster. Okay, so all this stuff is giving us information. Our curve is going to look something like that, and we just have to figure out where it starts. So it starts at the top of the hill. So this is a cosine, because if it starts at a maximum, then it's definitely cosine. If it starts at a minimum, it's definitely cosine. The top of the hill is 18 meters from the ground. So okay, so it starts right there. Okay, then it says that it takes 3 seconds for the coaster to reach the bottom of the hill, which is 2 meters off the ground. So if that's 1 second, 2 seconds, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if it takes 2 seconds, or sorry, it takes 3 seconds, that means that the bottom of the hill is at 3 seconds, and it says it's 2 meters off the ground, so it's at 2 meters. All right, and then remember that the max and mins are like equal distance from each other, so that means that the next maximum is going to be 3 seconds away from that, so it's going to be at 6. Okay, and then that is our cosine function, like that. Okay, and that would just keep repeating and repeating. So 1, 2, 3. So every 3 seconds, you're hitting a maximum and a minimum, and you're getting another cycle of cosine. So each of those are just going to keep happening over and over again. So we know that you don't really know A yet. We don't really know B, but we know that our period is from start to finish 6 seconds. C, there's no left and right movement. And then D is going to be our midline. Okay, so to find A, it's your maximum minus your minimum divided by 2. So our maximum is 18 minus our minimum, which is 2, divided by 2. So that's going to equal 18 minus 2 is 16. 16 divided by 2 is 8. Okay, and then B is the period equals 2 pi over B, and our period was 6. So if I solve for b, I get pi over 3. There was no c, and then d is going to be your max plus your min divided by 2. So we've got 18 plus 2 divided by 2, which is 20 divided by 2, which is 10. So 10 is halfway between. So our midline is y equals 10, and our d value is just 10. Okay, so we've got all this information, and I just need to put it into an equation. So y equals 8 times cosine pi over 3x plus 10. Okay. Okay, so Mr. Keeping, disguised as a math man, a costume crime fighter, is swinging back and forth in the front of the window to Miss Gibbons' math class at time equals 3 seconds. He is at one end of the swing, 4 meters away from the window, and at 7, he's at the other end of the swing, 20 meters away from the window. So he's swinging back and forth every time, so it's going to be periodic. It's going to keep repeating. So what we need to figure out is how to sketch this curve. So at time equals 3, he is at one end of his swing, 4 meters from the window. So the bottom is always time. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so those are our 2 major times that we just saw. And then our distances probably need to go up by like, oops. If we go up by 2s, we'll hit the 20 at the top. All right, so at 3 seconds, we're at 4 meters from the window. And at 7 seconds, we're 20 meters away from the window. Okay, so he keeps doing that over and over and over again. So every 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds, we're at another max or another min. Okay, so that's just a couple of cycles that we can draw. That's like this. Okay, and then one full cycle can be right here. Okay, so this starts at a minimum this time, which means that it's cosine, but it's actually negative cosine. And it ends here. So if it starts at 3 and ends at 7, I'm sorry, not 7, ends at 11, that means my period is 8, which means that my B we have to use our equation that period equals 2 pi over B. So B is going to equal pi over 4. Okay. The amplitude is your max minus your minimum divided by 2. So that is going to be 20 minus 4 divided by 2, which is 8. And then our D value is your max plus your min divided by 2. So it's 20 plus 4 divided by 2 is going to be 12. Okay, so our midline is 12. And that's exactly halfway between our max and our min. And that's kind of like our x-axis. Like these are all our zeros here. Okay. And then we shifted to the right 3 when we started. So our C value is going to be 3, and then we're going to have to make that a -3 in our equation. Okay, so our amplitude is -8 because we started at a minimum instead of a maximum. It's -8 cosine of pi over 4 times x minus 3 plus 12. Okay, so I want you guys to pause the video and try to do this problem, and then when you come back, I will go through it so you can see if you got it right. Okay, so with this problem, we've got John is floating on a tube in a wave tank, and at t equals 1 second, he reaches his maximum height of 14 above the bottom of the pool, and at 9 seconds, he reaches a minimum height 2 meters above the pool. Okay, so we've got our time is down here. All right, I think that's enough. And then for our, we can go by twos over here. Okay, so at 1 second, we're at the maximum, which is at 14, and at 9 seconds, we're at the minimum, which is 2. Okay, so that means the next maximum is 8 seconds away, and it's at 14. Okay, so that's what one cycle of our cosine looks like. And it's cosine because we start at a maximum and we end at a maximum. Okay, so if we start at 1 and we end at 17, that means our period is 16. Okay, so that means our b value is period equals 2 pi over b, and b equals pi over 8. Okay, our a value is our max minus your min divided by 2, which is 6, and our d value is max plus your min divided by 2, which is 8. And then our c value, we moved over to the right 1, so it's just 1. So we've got y equals 6 cosine pi over 8 times x minus 1 plus 8. Okay, and that is your final answer. And if you want to get this, you just plug in 21 for x, and you figure it out. Just make sure your calculator is in radian mode when you do that. All right, same thing for this one. Maybe pause the screen, work it out, and see if you can get the right answer. Okay, so we've got the pendulum on a grandfather's clock is swinging back and forth as it keeps time. The device is measuring the distance the pendulum is above the floor as it swings back and forth. At the beginning, we're at the highest point, so I know that that is a cosine because we're at the max to start with. And Then at 1 second later, it's at its lowest point, which is 12. And then 1 second later, it's back at the highest position. So what I'm seeing is that maybe our period is 2 seconds. It takes 2 seconds to go from the max down to the min all the way back up to the max again. So we'll go by twos here, 2 blocks. And then for the height, it goes up to 36. So, but it starts at 12. So we'll start at 10. That is not going to work. We're going to have to go by fours. Okay. Beginning of the measurements, we're at the highest point. So it doesn't say at any certain time. So that means at 0 seconds, we're at the highest point. 1 second later, we are at the lowest point, which is 12. And then 1 second later, we're back at the highest point, which is 36. Okay, so every second, we're back to the max or the next max or the next min. Okay, so that's what it will keep repeating. 1 full cycle is just this first part here. And it'll be positive sine or cosine because it starts at the max. And our amplitude or A value is going to be 36 minus 12 divided by 2, which is going to be 12. Our D value is 36 plus 12 divided by 2. So that's going to be 24. So at 24, we're halfway in between. We go up 12, down 12 from 24. Our C value, we didn't shift over. And then our B value, so we've got period equals 2 seconds. So 2 equals 2 pi over B. So B is just going to equal pi. So we've got 12 cosine pi x minus nothing. So it's just pi x. And then plus 24. All right, you do them the same way when they're signed. They just start in the middle, but everything else is the same. So I hope this helps. Do your homework in Canvas, and there's an Alex assignment.